November 15th. Thanksgiving was just a week away. My son Brian had just texted me asking what time dinner would be. It was the kind of normal message that used to make me smile. Used to, because that was before the conversation at the cabin. Before he looked at me across the deck of the lake house I'd spent 30 years building and said those words. Before everything changed. That's why I'm writing this from a villa in Tuscany, instead of preparing my dining room in Sacramento for the holiday meal I'd hosted for 34 consecutive years. Let me back up. I'm Robert. I'm 62. I've been a widower for 5 years now since Karen passed from ovarian cancer. My son Brian is 34, married to Stephanie for 6 years, and they have 2 kids, Emma who's 5, and Noah who's 3. They're good kids. The grandchildren, I mean. I'm still deciding about their parents. For the past 30 years, since Brian was 4 years old, Karen and I owned a cabin on Lake Tahoe. 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, right on the water. We bought it for $75,000 back in 1994. Back when that area wasn't the tech money vacation destination it is now. We scrimped and saved for the down payment. Karen worked extra shifts as a nurse. I took on weekend consulting gigs on top of my job as an aerospace engineer. That cabin represented every sacrifice we made, every vacation we didn't take elsewhere, every dinner we cooked at home instead of going out. We'd spend every summer there. Brian learned to swim in that lake. We taught him to fish off our dock. Karen and I would sit on the deck every evening with a glass of wine, watching the sunset turn the water orange and gold. After she died, I couldn't go there for 2 years. Too many memories, too much of her in every corner. Then 3 years ago, I finally went back. I renovated it. New kitchen, new bathrooms, new deck. I spent $60,000 making it beautiful again. It was my therapy, my way of honoring Karen's memory. When I finished, I started going there once a month, just for long weekends. It gave me peace, a place to read, to think, to remember the good times without the crushing grief I felt at home. Brian and Stephanie knew about the cabin, of course. They'd been there dozens of times growing up, but they'd never shown much interest in it as adults. They preferred Palm Springs, or Hawaii, or wherever influencers went these days. Stephanie had some kind of lifestyle blog with a decent following, maybe 30,000 subscribers, always posting about luxury travel and designer clothes. Brian worked as a sales manager for a software company, made good money, around $90,000 a year. Stephanie's blog brought in maybe another $40,000. Combined with Brian's salary, they were doing fine, or so I thought. Last July, they asked if they could use the cabin for a weekend. Of course, I said yes. It's a family property. I was glad to see it get use. They took the kids, posted about it on Stephanie's blog, beautiful photos of the lake and the deck and the sunset. She tagged it as a secret hideaway and talked about unplugging from the chaos. I thought it was nice, harmless. Then they asked again in August, and September, and October. By the 4th time, I noticed something. Each time they went, Stephanie's posts got more detailed. She started including hints about the location. Comments on her posts asked where this amazing place was. She'd respond with coy answers. A family gem in the Sierras. A slice of heaven we're so blessed to escape to. I didn't think much of it until November 8th. That's when Brian called and asked if we could talk. In person, at the cabin. Said it was important. I drove up from Sacramento that Saturday morning. 3 hours through gorgeous fall colors. I got there around noon. Brian and Stephanie were already there. They'd let themselves in with the key I'd given them. They'd bought bagels and coffee, set up on the deck like we were having some kind of meeting. That should have been my first warning. We made small talk for a while. How were the kids? How was work? The weather? Then Brian cleared his throat in that way he did when he was nervous, when he was about to ask for something. Dad, we wanted to talk to you about the cabin. I waited. Stephanie jumped in. She had this bright, enthusiastic tone, like she was pitching a client. Robert, we've been doing a lot of research. Do you know how much vacation rentals make in this area? We're talking $400 a night minimum. During ski season, maybe $600? This cabin could generate $15,000 to $20,000 a month during peak season. I sipped my coffee. That's interesting. Brian leaned forward. Dad, the thing is, you're only using this place maybe 4 days a month. The rest of the time it just sits here empty. It's not generating any income. It's actually costing you money in property taxes and maintenance. I'm aware, I said. The property taxes were $8,000 a year. Maintenance, utilities, and upkeep ran another $6,000. $14,000 a year to maintain a piece of my heart. Worth every penny. So here's what we're thinking, Stephanie said. She pulled out her phone, swiped through some photos. We could turn this into an Airbnb. I'd manage all the marketing and guest communication through my blog platform. We already have the audience. Brian would handle the booking calendar and maintenance coordination. We'd use professional photographers, stage it beautifully, really maximize the rental potential. And where do I fit into this? I asked. They exchanged a look. That look. The one that said they'd rehearsed this conversation. Well, Brian said, we'd need you to transfer the deed to our names for tax purposes and liability reasons. It's cleaner that way. We'd handle everything. You wouldn't have to worry about a thing. And obviously, we'd give you a share of the profits. I set down my coffee. A share of the profits from my cabin that I'd be signing over to you. It makes sense, Dad. You're retired. You don't need the income from your pension and investments. We're raising kids. We could really use the extra income. Plus, this way the cabin stays in the family. We maintain it, improve it, and eventually it passes to Emma and Noah. I looked at Stephanie. She was nodding enthusiastically. And you'd still be able to use it, Robert. We'd block off time for you. Maybe 1 weekend a month? 1 weekend a month, in the cabin I owned, that I'd be signing over to them. Let me think about it, I said. Of course. Brian stood up like the meeting was over. Take all the time you need. We just wanted to plant the seed. This could be really great for everyone. They left that afternoon. I stayed at the cabin for the rest of the weekend, sitting on the deck, thinking. Something felt wrong about the whole thing. Not just the audacity of asking me to sign over my property, but the way they'd presented it, like it was already decided, like my role was just to agree. I called my lawyer friend Mark on Monday, told him about the conversation. He was quiet for a minute. Bob, I'm going to be straight with you. If you sign that property over to them, you have zero legal claim to it. They could rent it every single day of the year, and you'd have no recourse. That share of profits they mentioned, that would be entirely voluntary on their part. No contract, no guarantee. You'd be a guest in your own cabin. That's what I thought. And Bob, if they run it as a business and it generates significant income, you giving them that property could be seen as a gift. The IRS could come after you for gift taxes. We're talking about a property that's probably worth $700,000 now. That's way over the annual gift exclusion. $700,000. I'd had it appraised last year for insurance purposes. The appraiser had actually suggested $750,000, but I'd taken the conservative estimate. What should I do? Tell them no, it's your property. You don't owe them a business opportunity. So that's what I decided. I'd tell them no, clearly, kindly, but firmly. No. I called Brian the next week, said we should talk. He suggested Thanksgiving, said they'd come to my place as usual. We'd have dinner, and we could discuss it then. I agreed. It felt appropriate. Family dinner, family discussion. Thanksgiving morning, I was up early prepping the turkey. I'd invited my sister Janet and her husband, my old colleague Mike and his wife, and of course Brian's family. 8 adults, 2 kids. The dining room table was set with Karen's good china. I'd spent 2 days cooking. Turkey, stuffing, mashed potatoes, green bean casserole, cranberry sauce, 3 pies. Brian and Stephanie showed up at noon. The kids ran in, excited. Emma helped me set out the napkins. Noah wanted to see the turkey. It was nice, normal, for about an hour. Then, while I was carving the turkey in the kitchen, Brian came in. Hey, Dad, did you think about our proposal? I put down the carving knife. I did, and I appreciate the thought you put into it, but I'm not interested in turning the cabin into a rental property. It's a family retreat, not a business. His face darkened. Dad, come on, you're being stubborn. It's my property, Brian. I'm allowed to be stubborn about it. You're retired. You don't even need it. I turned to face him. I don't need it? Son, I spent 30 years building that place with your mother. I spent $60,000 renovating it after she died. It's not about need. It's about what matters to me. What matters to you is sitting in an empty cabin feeling sorry for yourself. I felt like he'd slapped me. Excuse me? You heard me. Mom's been gone 5 years, Dad. At some point you have to move on. Hoarding this cabin like some kind of shrine isn't healthy. Stephanie appeared in the doorway. She must have heard us. Brian's right, Robert. This cabin could help us give Emma and Noah opportunities. Private school, college funds. Don't you want that for your grandchildren? I have college funds set up for both of them already. I started those the day they were born. You know that. Okay, but we have other expenses. Our mortgage, student loans. We're barely keeping our heads above water. I stared at her. You make $130,000 a year between the two of you. Your mortgage is $2,800 a month. I know because Brian told me when you bought the house. Where is all your money going? She bristled. That's really none of your business. It becomes my business when you're asking me to hand over a $700,000 asset because you claim you're struggling. Brian stepped between us. Dad, this isn't about the money. Then what is it about? It's about you being reasonable. You're getting older. You're living alone in a house that's too big for you. You spend your weekends at a cabin in the mountains, by yourself. Don't you think that's a little sad? You're 62 years old, and you have no life, no purpose. You're just existing. And there it was, the real conversation under all the others. No purpose, I repeated. I didn't mean it like that. Yes, you did. I could feel my voice shaking, not with anger, with hurt. You think because I'm retired, because your mother is gone, I'm just taking up space. Dad, you want the cabin because you see it as wasted on me. An old man with nothing better to do than sit by a lake and remember better days. Stephanie crossed her arms. You know what, Robert? Maybe we're right. You retired from your job. What's the point of you anymore? You don't work. You don't contribute anything. The least you could do is help your own son build a future. The room went silent. I could hear my sister and Mike in the dining room, their conversation trailing off. They'd heard. Brian didn't contradict her. He just stood there, looking uncomfortable, but not denying what she'd said. I picked up the carving knife. For a second, Brian flinched. But I just went back to carving the turkey. My hands were steady. My voice was steady. I think you two should leave. Dad, come on. Take the kids. Go home. Dinner's canceled. You're being ridiculous. I looked up at my son. 34 years old. I'd raised him, taught him to tie his shoes, ride a bike, drive a car, paid for his education, gave him $25,000 for his wedding, gave him another $15,000 for the down payment on his house, set up college funds for his kids, and now he stood in my kitchen while his wife told me I had no purpose, and he said nothing. Get out of my house. They left. Took Emma and Noah, who were crying because they didn't understand why Thanksgiving was ruined. My sister came into the kitchen. She'd heard everything. Bob, I'm so sorry. I finished carving the turkey. Let's eat. Everyone else is here. No reason to waste good food. We had Thanksgiving dinner, but I barely tasted it. I kept hearing Stephanie's words. What's the point of you anymore? After everyone left, I sat in my living room. The house was too quiet, too big. Maybe they were right about that part, but they were wrong about the rest. I had purpose. I had value. I didn't need to prove it by signing over my assets to fund their lifestyle. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the cabin, about Karen, about the life we'd built. And I realized something. If I gave Brian the cabin, I wasn't being generous. I was being weak. I was teaching him that he could take whatever he wanted from me as long as he made me feel guilty enough, as long as he questioned my worth. And that's not the lesson I wanted to teach. The next morning, I called Mark, my lawyer. I need you to do something for me. Over the next 2 weeks, I made arrangements. I listed the Lake Tahoe cabin with a real estate agent. Not publicly. Private sale. Through their network. I had 3 offers within a week. I accepted one for $735,000 from a family out of San Jose. They wanted a vacation home for their kids and grandkids. They understood what it meant to build something for family. I cleared out all my personal belongings. Photos, Karen's things, my fishing gear. I donated most of it. Some I kept, packed in my garage. The closing was scheduled for December 20th. I also made an appointment with a financial advisor. Not my usual guy. Someone who specialized in retirement strategies and international living. I told him what I wanted to do. I'm 62. I have my pension, my 401k, and Social Security in a few years. I just sold a property for $735. I want to travel, live abroad for a while, maybe permanently. What are my options? He pulled up spreadsheets, ran numbers. Mr. Hawkins, you're in excellent financial shape. Your pension and investments alone generate $65,000 a year. You could live very comfortably in a dozen different countries on that. With the proceeds from the cabin sale, you could buy property outright in Italy, Portugal, Costa Rica, Thailand. You'd have no mortgage, low cost of living, excellent health care in most of those places. What about taxes? As long as you maintain your U.S. citizenship and file properly, you're fine. Many countries have tax treaties with the U.S. You might even come out ahead. I thought about Italy. Karen and I had always talked about going to Italy. We'd planned a trip for her 60th birthday. She died 3 months before we were supposed to go. Tell me about Italy. He pulled up information, showed me towns in Tuscany, small villages where you could buy a renovated villa for $200,000, where the weather was beautiful year-round, where an American retiree could live like a king on $3,000 a month. I'll do it, I said. Which part? All of it. Sell the cabin, buy property in Italy, move there. He smiled. When do you want to start? Immediately? The cabin sold December 20th. After closing costs and paying off the small remaining loan I'd taken out for the renovation, I netted $685,000. I wired $200,000 to an account in Italy, working with a realtor there who'd found me a perfect villa in a town called Montepulciano. 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, a garden, a view of the Tuscan hills. Move-in ready. I put $300,000 in investments, diversified portfolio, conservative allocations. That would generate another $15,000 a year in income, bringing my total annual income to $80,000. More than enough. The remaining $185,000 I kept liquid, travel money, emergency fund, furniture for the villa, adventures. I scheduled my move for January 15th. One-way ticket to Rome, then a train to Montepulciano. I hired an estate sale company to sell most of my furniture. I put my house in Sacramento on the market. I didn't need it anymore. It sold in 3 days for $610,000. That money went straight into investments. Another $30,000 a year in income. I was going to live like a king. But before I left, I needed to do one thing. I needed to talk to Brian. I invited him to lunch. Just him, not Stephanie. He agreed, probably thinking I'd changed my mind about the cabin. We met at a restaurant downtown on January 10th, 5 days before my flight. He walked in looking hopeful. That made what I had to do harder. Dad, I'm glad you called. I've been wanting to apologize. What Stephanie said at Thanksgiving was out of line. Was it? I asked. He shifted. She was frustrated. We both were. But she shouldn't have said that thing about you having no purpose. But you didn't disagree with her. I was shocked. I didn't know what to say. You've had 6 weeks to know what to say, Brian. This is the first time you've brought it up. He looked down at his menu. You're right. I should have called sooner. I should have stood up for you. I'm sorry. I believed he was sorry. But sorry doesn't undo the words. Sorry doesn't change what was revealed. I sold the cabin, I said. His head snapped up. What? I sold it. Closed on December 20th. You, Dad, why? We could have worked something out. You didn't have to sell it. Yes, I did. Because every time I went there after that conversation, all I could think about was you and Stephanie standing in my kitchen, telling me I was wasting it, that I had no purpose, that the least I could do was give it to you. We didn't say give it. We said partner on it. Brian, be honest. If I'd signed that deed over to you, would I have ever seen a penny of profit? He didn't answer. That's what I thought. You wanted me to give you a $700,000 asset, call it a partnership, and then I'd be grateful when you let me use it one weekend a month. It wasn't like that. Yes, it was. And you know what? I don't blame you for asking. I blame myself for raising you to think that was okay. He looked stung. That's not fair, isn't it? When's the last time you asked how I was doing? Not asked me for something, just asked how I was. Silence. I'm 62 years old, Brian. I lost my wife. I retired from a job I loved. I'm figuring out who I am in this next phase of my life. And instead of supporting that, you told me I was wasting my time, that I had no purpose, that the only value I had left was in what I could give you. Dad? I never said that. You didn't have to. You stood there while Stephanie said it, and you didn't defend me. That told me everything I needed to know. I pulled an envelope out of my jacket and slid it across the table. He looked at it like it might explode. What's this? Open it. He did. Inside was a cashier's check for $15,000 and a letter. The check is for Emma and Noah. I already have their college fund set up, but this is extra. For anything you think they need. Dance classes, sports, whatever. It's for them, Brian, not for you. He stared at the check. Dad, I don't understand. Read the letter. He unfolded it. I'd written it 3 days ago, revised it a dozen times. I'd made Karen's sister read it to make sure I wasn't being too harsh. She'd cried, said I was doing the right thing. The letter said, Brian, by the time you read this, I'll be living in Italy. I've sold the cabin and the house. I'm starting over in a place where no one knows me as the widower, or the retiree, or the guy who's just existing. I'm going to be Robert, just Robert. I want you to understand why I'm doing this. It's not to punish you, it's to save myself. When your mother died, I lost my partner, my best friend, my reason for getting up in the morning. I spent 2 years in a fog. Then I started rebuilding. The cabin was part of that. Having a place that was ours, that held our memories, gave me something to hold on to. When you asked me to turn it into a rental property, you weren't just asking for a business opportunity. You were asking me to erase the last piece of the life your mother and I built. You were telling me that my memories, my grief, my process of healing, all mattered less than your financial convenience. And maybe you're right that I should move on. But moving on doesn't mean erasing the past. It means taking it with me and building something new. That's what I'm doing in Italy. I love you. I love Emma and Noah. But I can't be in your life right now the way things are. I need you to understand that I have value beyond what I can give you. I need you to see me as a person, not a resource. Maybe someday we'll rebuild our relationship, but that can't happen until you understand why this hurt me so much. Until you understand that asking someone, "What's the point of you?" is asking them to justify their existence. And no one should have to do that, not for their own child. I hope you use the $15,000 wisely. I hope you teach Emma and Noah that people have worth beyond their utility. I hope you learn that love isn't about what you can extract from someone. I'll be in Italy. I'll send postcards to the kids, but I need space from you and Stephanie. I need to figure out who Robert is when he's not being taken for granted. Take care of your family. Be better than you were at Thanksgiving. Dad, Brian read it twice. When he looked up, there were tears in his eyes. Dad, please don't do this. We can fix this. I'll talk to Stephanie. We'll apologize properly. Brian, I'm leaving in 5 days. My flight is booked. My villa in Italy is bought. This isn't a negotiating tactic. This is me choosing myself for once. But the kids, they'll miss you. I'll FaceTime them. I'll send gifts. But I can't pretend Thanksgiving didn't happen. I can't pretend that conversation at the cabin didn't reveal something fundamental about how you see me. How do I see you? I stood up, put $40 on the table for my untouched lunch, like someone whose only value is in what I can provide. And son, I'm worth more than that. I just wish you'd realized it before I had to leave the country to prove it. I walked out. He called after me, but I didn't turn around. 5 days later, I boarded a plane to Rome. I'd given my sister my power of attorney, for any remaining estate issues. I'd set up automatic payments for all my bills. I'd forwarded my mail. I'd notified Social Security of my international address. I was ready. The villa in Montepulciano was perfect. Small town, friendly people, incredible food, beautiful weather. I hired a local woman, Sophia, to teach me Italian twice a week. I joined a hiking group for expats. I volunteered at a local English language library. I made friends. I found my purpose. Turns out, it wasn't in being useful to people who didn't appreciate me. It was in being myself in a place that let me start fresh. Brian emailed once a week at first, then once every 2 weeks, then once a month. The emails were always the same. Apologies, updates on the kids, requests to call. I responded to the updates on Emma and Noah. I ignored the rest. Stephanie never contacted me. Not once. I wasn't surprised. 3 months after I moved, my sister Janet called. "Bob, you need to know something. Brian and Stephanie are struggling." Struggling how? Financially. Without the cabin rental income they were counting on, they're having trouble making ends meet. Stephanie had to take a part-time job. Brian's been picking up freelance work on weekends. They were counting on income from property they didn't own and that I never agreed to rent out? Apparently. They'd already spent money they didn't have, assuming you'd say yes. New cars, a vacation to Hawaii they booked for spring break, private school deposits for Emma. I was silent for a moment. "Janet, that's not my problem." "I know. I'm not asking you to fix it. I'm just telling you because Brian's been calling me, asking if I can convince you to come home." I am home. And I was. Montepulciano felt more like home than Sacramento had in 5 years. I woke up every morning and had coffee on my terrace, looking out over the Tuscan hills. I'd spend my days reading, hiking, taking cooking classes, learning the language. I'd made friends with the elderly man who ran the wine shop down the street. He was teaching me about Italian wines. I was teaching him about American football. I'd found a church, small and welcoming. I'd started volunteering there, helping with their English language outreach program. People knew me as Roberto, the American who moved here for a fresh start. They didn't know about Karen, or Brian, or the cabin. They just knew me as I was now. And that was enough. At night, I'd sit on my terrace with a glass of wine and think about what Stephanie had asked. "What's the point of you anymore?" I'd found the answer. The point of me was to live a life I chose. To honor Karen's memory by actually living, not just existing in the shrine of our past. To show my grandkids, even from a distance, that it's never too late to start over. That your worth isn't measured in what you provide for others, but in how you choose to spend the one life you're given. 6 months after I moved, I got a letter. Not an email, an actual letter, forwarded by Janet. It was from Brian, handwritten, 8 pages. He told me everything. How he and Stephanie had gotten in over their heads with debt. How they'd been counting on the cabin income to dig themselves out. How they'd already committed to expenses based on that assumption. How, when I sold it instead, their carefully constructed house of cards collapsed. They'd had to sell one of their cars, pull Emma from private school, cancel the Hawaii trip. Stephanie had taken a job at a marketing firm, 40 hours a week plus her blog. Brian was working 60-hour weeks, trying to make up the difference. But more importantly, he wrote about what he'd learned, how he'd been taking me for granted, how he'd seen me as a safety net instead of a person, how Stephanie's words at Thanksgiving had echoed in his head every day since, how he'd realized, too late, that asking me to justify my existence was the cruelest thing he could have done. He wrote, "Dad, I get it now. You're not an ATM. You're not a resource to be managed. You're my father. You're a man who lost his wife and found the strength to rebuild his life. You're someone who worked hard for 40 years and earned the right to enjoy retirement however you choose. You're someone who deserved better from his son. I'm not asking you to come back. I'm not asking for money. I'm not asking for anything except the chance to apologize in person someday. When you're ready, if you're ever ready, I'm teaching Emma and Noah about you. Not the version of you I took for granted. The real you. the aerospace engineer who helped design parts for spacecraft, the husband who loved his wife so much he renovated their cabin as a memorial to her, the man who had the courage to move to Italy at 62 and start completely over. I want them to know their grandfather as someone to admire, not someone to use. I'm sorry it took losing you to figure that out. I read that letter 3 times. Then I folded it up and put it in my desk drawer. I didn't respond. Not yet. Maybe someday, but not yet. Because here's what I learned in Italy. In my villa, overlooking the Tuscan hills, drinking wine made by my neighbor, speaking broken Italian with Sophia, hiking with my expat friends, living my life on my terms. The point of me is not to justify my existence to anyone. The point of me is to exist joyfully, purposefully, authentically, to take the years I have left and fill them with experiences and connections and growth. To honor Karen, not by clinging to the past, but by embracing the future she would have wanted for me. The point of me is not to be useful to people who don't value me. It's to be whole for myself. And you know what? I am. For the first time since Karen died, I'm whole. I wake up with purpose. Not because I'm providing for someone or proving something to someone, but because I'm living a life I chose. A life that makes me happy. Maybe Brian understands that now. Maybe he doesn't. Either way, it's no longer my job to teach him. He's 34 years old. He's a father himself. If he wants to rebuild our relationship, he needs to do the work. He needs to prove, not with words, but with actions, that he sees me as more than what I can give him. Until then, I have my villa, my wine, my Italian lessons, my hiking group, my church, my new friends who know me as Roberto, not as someone's disappointing father or someone's widow. I have my purpose. And it's enough. Last week, I got a FaceTime call from Emma. She's 6 now. She held up a drawing she'd made. It was me, standing in front of a house with Italy written on top. I made this for you, Grandpa. Daddy says you live in Italy now, and it's very beautiful. It is beautiful, sweetheart. Are you happy there? I looked out my window at the golden afternoon light on the hills. Yes, Emma, I'm very happy here. Daddy says we might visit someday. Would that be okay? I thought about it. Maybe someday, when you're older, I'll show you all my favorite places. Okay. I love you, Grandpa. I love you too, sweetheart. After she hung up, I sat on my terrace and thought about that question. Would it be okay if they visited? Would I want to see Brian again? I don't know. Maybe. Someday. When enough time has passed. When he's proven he's learned what he needed to learn. When I'm ready to let him back into my life without resentment. But that's future Robert's problem. Present Robert has dinner plans with Marco and Sophia. We're going to the trattoria down the street for pasta and wine. Then we're going to argue about whether Inter Milan or Juventus has the better team this year. Even though I barely understand soccer and they barely understand football. Present Robert has a life, a purpose, a point, and that's more than enough.